Thank you very much. I appreciate you yielding. As many of you may have seen yesterday, led by some Cornell lab ornithology scientists, a report came out that the breeding population of birds in the U.S. and Canada has dropped nearly 30% since 1970. The good news is as we're making buildings more efficient, and particularly when we're dealing with glass, we can make bird-safe buildings as well. Nearly 1 billion birds, estimates run from anywhere from 100 million, 640 million to 1 billion birds a year collide with buildings and die. Accordingly, I would ask, instead of going through all the testimony, I would ask that we have unanimous consent to submit reports on how we can have both energy efficient and bird-safe buildings. And I would mention that the American Bird Conservancy has shouted out yesterday that one of the ways to solve the problem is a bill that Mr. Quigley and I have introduced, and Mr. Welch and I are currently working on an amendment to his energy bill that would incorporate some of this language.
You hear no objections, so ordered.
And I yield back.
Thank you.